So, welcome back. This is day two. It's actually the same day for us, but you're picking up because we broke it up because it was a long interview. So we broke it up into 2 weeks. So this is us picking up on the previous conversation. This is Social Worker Life with Kim Beam, and we're here with Frankie. And so when you met up with the people who became your family, and you started attending events with them, and you started um, allowing yourself to explore what it meant to be a boy with them,
Mhm.
right? Because that wasn't something. It was something I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? Because I'm only looking at it from the outside, from like the
Yeah.
voyeuristic, like Facebook, what Facebook shows me, right? But it felt like to me at first it was a costume
Hmm. Yeah.
before it actually became something you were comfortable saying, actually, I'm more comfortable being this way.
hmm Yeah. So it's interesting that you say that because that was part of my journey was actually putting on costumes. And my friend who was my chosen parent, who I was really identifying with and, wanting to just become or feel the way that they felt about themselves, they started talking to me about drag. They did drag for years. And that was just something that they did for fun. And I was like a theater kid and I really enjoyed costuming and makeup. And I was like, I'm going to try that. So it was a literal costume that I was putting on. And it's funny because I still do drag now. Through COVID, that has slowed down, but as I've learned more and more about who I was, like that has changed too. Because originally the costume was a man, was a suit, was a fake mustache. Like that's what my drag looked like. Um, and then that was kind of like being able to be in that role and to play with gender and to like gender bend on stage is when I started to have the experience of being like, oh, this is something that I feel comfortable with. It's not quite who I am. It's not quite there, but I'm dialing in. I'm figuring it out. I started doing drag where I was like playing with gender. So I might be dressed in a suit one act and then pull it off in the middle of the song and have a dress on underneath of it. And I'm like, that feels cool. That feels more like me. And so I kept transitioning my drag and kind of my personhood at the same time. And I think drag really became a tool for me to have a space to play with gender in a way that everyday life didn't give me. And that really helped me figure out this part of myself that was not just drag. I was like, you're not just Frankie in drag, you are still Frankie. And like, you're not that drag persona, but there's a version of you under this that is more true than it ever has been. So, yeah.
It's funny that like we put on costumes to pretend to be somebody else,
Mhm.
right? To act, to play a part. And in a way, it unlocked your true self.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something that like we do through our entire lives. We put on costumes as
Oh,
little kids to pretend to be things. We put on our mom's heels and our dad's hat. And it's like, we're always doing that. We're always using that to try to like figure out what we're going to be and what feels good for us. And like, I don't think that has to stop when you're an adult. I think it's still fun to play dress up and to whether that's getting in drag or just like trying to see what you feel more comfortable in that isn't just the standard that you've been given. And I think you can learn a lot about yourself, not just like gender identity, but a lot about yourself as a person doing that. So, yeah.
which also brings me to another point, which is there are so many people who wear masks all the time and are dressed in a costume all the time and have no idea how to break free and be themselves and be who they really want to be because they are playing a role
Yeah.
in real life, right? In their real life role, right? And in a way, little Frankie was playing a role in high school and playing a role in college
hmm
until Frankie got to be who Frankie really wanted to be.
Yeah.
But I think there are adults who walk around playing roles all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's something that like I wish we were okay because I feel like I'm somebody that can sometimes tell when that's happening. I'm not the best person that can be like there's something else underneath of there, but I feel like that's like I'm able to perceive that about people a lot. And being somebody who's
That's
on the other
that's
side
called
of it,
intuition, and
it's
you
called
really need to be
intuition.
working. It's called intuition, and you should really. We all need to be working on expanding our intuition, right? Because
Yes.
yeah, your field and my field, they all touch each other, and you pick up things with your heart before you do with your head. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And when
Don't
I
negate your intuition ever.
yes, right.
Listen to it. Yeah.
And when I feel that, and when I see people that I'm feeling like, I feel like there's something more to this person or there's something about them that they're not showing me. I always want to know what it is, right? Part of it is just a curiosity, being like, what's going on there? But a part
What
of
are
it
you
too,
hiding?
yeah, what are you hiding, right? And you know, sometimes it's safety, sometimes it's like what's actually there. But sometimes I think there too is a part of me that's like, and I wonder about my friend that brought me to the underground. I wonder about my friend later in life that was able to just be someone I could look up to and really see myself in. Um, I wonder if they get this feeling too, because sometimes I feel this pull towards that person to be like, come out from there, like, come out, you know,
Mm.
like there's something in me that's reaching towards you and recognizes a part of yourself that isn't coming to the surface. And like, what is it? And like, can you just like be out here with me because it's okay, right? Um, and for a lot of people, it isn't always safe. But I think when there are moments like that where I feel like there's something in me that sees something in you, I really want people to feel safe to even just give me a glimmer of it. Because I think when you do that, um, that's when you can see like an explosion on the other side of the other person being like, yes, you're here, I'm here, we're comfortable with each other, you're safe. And I think that just opens up so much more in people. Um, but if you don't start that conversation, or if other people aren't willing to also provide that vulnerability, you don't ever get there. And we're always on these masks, for both sides sometimes.
Yeah, agreed. So you at some point decided that surgery was the way to go.
Hmm. Yes, yeah. So, and that is something that is very different in everyone's journey. Right? I think that um surgery, even like surgery, when people think about what surgery means for a trans person, they might have one idea in their head. And I think there's actually probably like 20 different things that can mean. And that's like the low end, right? So, but for me, I did recognize that top surgery was something that I really wanted for myself. And speaking of intuition and all those things that we trust and we love, um, I had actually gone on this retreat, and we did like it was like a meditation and dance retreat, that was kind of combined those things. And we did this meditation where we drank this like medicinal chocolate drink. I think it was cacao. It was like cacao mixed with something else. And it's called a heart opener for a lot of reasons. But the idea was we were supposed to lay back, and this woman kind of narrated this journey we went on. And all it was like, you're going to, you know, go on this journey. You're going to see part of yourself, and you're going to see like the love and the light that this cacao is bringing. And that's going to like, you know, open your heart and make you feel good and all these things. And I was like, all right, yeah, that's something I'm willing to believe in. Sure, let's try this and see what it's like. And in that journey, I had this vision, um, and it was a flame, because they said at some point you're going to approach this fire and look into the fire and you'll see something. And in that fire, I didn't see anything at first. And they were like, all right, now go and approach whatever is in that fire, and you're going to become into the fire as well. And I was like, all right, whatever. I don't see anything. I'm going to go in and see what this is. And I remember looking down at myself in this vision that I'm having, laying on the floor of this like hotel, like convention center, right? All these people laid around me, our little cups in our hands. Um, and I saw that I didn't have breast tissue anymore. It was just gone. There was nothing there. And I was just like this very androgynous form. Um, and it was like such a gift to get that vision, because that was not
Mm.
something that I really had thought about, right? It's one of those things that once you realize that about yourself, everything else, like you look back and the lens is put on the past and you see all the things that make sense, right? But seeing that part, like seeing that vision and seeing my body like that, and then I came out of it and I was just like, that's that's who I am. That's that future self that I like. That's what that was. I really do believe that that was me stepping into the flames, and there was something that was burned away, and a future self was allowed to stand. Um, and so with that, and also with recognizing that I experienced dysphoria, which is this idea of seeing the body in front of you and it doesn't match up with what's in your head. And you can get a lot of feelings of anxiety, and of some people even will develop eating disorders, right? Because your body doesn't know what's wrong, but it knows there's something wrong. And so it's trying to do everything it can to make things okay and to make you look and feel what matches in your brain. And I remember I didn't ever develop a full eating disorder, but I remember having a lot of issues with my body image as a kid, and feeling like I was too big in a lot of places, and feeling like I didn't feel aligned with this like very feminine body that I had developed as a young kid. I think I was in 5th grade when I hit puberty. So I was a child experiencing all of those things that changed my body so quickly. And I think that all those feelings now, and after having this vision and seeing this future form, I realized like all those feelings of being too big and feeling like I need to like lose weight or work out, or that's what all the girls are saying when they don't like their bodies. That's what isn't what it was. It was this dysphoria, and it was this feeling of this is not aligned with what's in here. Um, and I had a lot of friends that had gotten surgery and had very different stories and very different journeys and even very different experiences and decisions within surgery. But talking to all of them made me realize like that was something that was what I needed for myself, because I was experiencing a lot of distress. Um, and it is something that I think is life-saving for a lot of people. And for me, I really think it was, because I got to a point where I was self-harming and I didn't know why.
Mm.
And I didn't know, like, I was talking to my therapist and she was aware of it. And she was like, are you feeling depressed? Are you feeling whatever? What do you feel in that moment? And it was never anything that was easy for me to understand or identify. And I think it probably isn't for a lot of people that are in that situation and that are going through those emotions. But
Mhm.
like, it's like, I'm not sad. So I don't know what this is, but this is happening. And this is an impulse I have. Um, and it was around my chest and it was related to having this extra
Mm.
tissue that shouldn't be there for me, right? So that was also a big turning point when I connected all those dots and realized all this is connected. um, and I can say that after getting surgery, all those feelings I had had of my body being too big were gone. Like, I have not experienced body dysmorphia, which is like feeling my body is bigger than it actually is, and having just a different perspective of like the size of your body than what is real and true and in front of you, right? Those went away. I think that dysphoria is something that is like a very complex beast that can show up in different ways in your life. So like I still get those feelings sometimes for different things, but I stopped even really like noticing my body, not in a bad way, but it was no longer an obstacle that I had to be faced with every day. It was just like a part of my being. And so I think a lot of that has to do with like mind body alignment and all of that clicking into place. And so now I can say like I just am, like this is just me, I just am. I'm not this mind and body that's trying to like figure out how to smush together and fit and work, right? It just, I'm just allowed to be a person and a being. And I think that that's really beautiful and really freeing. So,
I think, yeah. So when I think back to little Frankie,
mhm.
when I was no longer a teacher for little Frankie, and we would, I don't know, like there were times I forget why. I guess it was after creative writing, after Mad Scribes, maybe the literary magazine. You would need to
Yeah.
write home, but there were times that Frankie would sit in a way that you would take your arms, right? I don't know if you
Mhm.
know that you used to do this.
Probably not. So, yeah.
But you would take your arms and you would do this to yourself.
Oh, so I would like hold myself.
You would like hold yourself in.
Mhm.
And so when I heard the news about the top surgery, that image of you just like feeling like you were taking up too much in the car or taking up too much space or like hiding even your breath, like, right? Just hiding boobs, right? Like you would
Mhm.
just squeeze in. And when I found out about top surgery, I was like, that makes total sense to me.
That's so funny because that's one of those things that like I don't necessarily have that memory or awareness, but it's another one of those like the yearbook thing, right? It's like that all makes sense. It was always there.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you
I
were
have like
never
shit
comfortable
posture, right?
in
I like do this a lot. If you're listening, I hunch my shoulders a lot, and that is something that a lot of people do, but a lot of trans people do, and a lot of trans people who have gotten top surgery do. So there's all of these when you're recovering from surgery, they talk about fix your posture, and it's not just about like be aware of your posture through your healing. It's like you're gonna have to fix your posture because you probably screwed a lot of stuff up all those years that you're trying to hunch and make your chest smaller. Um,
Oh.
so that's another thing that my
Yeah, you
shoulders.
definitely would pull your shoulders forward and like curl in on yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something that I probably had no idea why. It probably just felt comfortable, right? And it felt
Yep.
comfortable for a reason.
So I was away on a silent retreat. This is something that came up in a podcast a couple weeks ago. For those of you who are following podcasts, sorry for the repeat. But like, I worked with a woman named Nima, who was a Nima, Nema. She was a massage therapist, and she told me in the cafeteria, she's like, "We need to work on your posture." I was like, "Okay." So she pulled me aside, and she's like, "Here's the deal." And she like took my shoulders and she pulled them down and back.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said, "What I need you to do," and now I'm like sticking my boobs out, right? Like, okay, my
Because
boobs
you
just
have to.
because you have to, right? So now my boobs are like out, like, okay. And she's like, "What I want you to do is I want you to imagine that there's a ball of light in your heart space.
Hmm.
And then I want you to lead with your light."
Hmm.
And once she said that to me, I'm not leading with my boobs, right? I'm leading with my light. And
Yeah.
I'm filled with light, and I am light, and we're all energy. Like, all of us are energy. We're all made up of atoms, and our heart space is actually more. And I found this out in my intuition class today. Our heart space is even more full of energy and light than even our brains. Like, this is where our like core is in our heart.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so if we're leading with our heart and we're leading with our light, right, it means your shoulders are down, your back is straight. But it also, like, for me, when I did that, it changed my whole confidence level.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I
Yeah.
felt my confidence level just totally shift and become even greater and more like badass. And I'm not normally a badass. It's not something I would ever classify myself as.
But yeah, that's real. Like the way that you posture yourself does, it changes your emotions a lot. And just so like think about somebody who spent the majority of their life at one point in a space where they were so uncomfortable with their body that their posture shifted for years. And imagine what that is like to finally be able to change that posture years later and be like, whoa. So I think about that too, of like all these years where I felt a certain way about myself. And part of that was, yeah, like I don't think I'm very confident. I had a lot of insecurities. And like there's a lot that went into that. But even something as simple as the way that I had to carry my body could influence that and could change how I'm able to feel about myself and present myself today. And that's huge.
It is huge. Yeah, absolutely. How, well, one, how did you afford the top surgery? Because that's elective, isn't it?
Yeah. So and working in health insurance now, there's a lot of complexities with that don't make any sense. It's all very arbitrary. So like some things are covered, some things aren't, but a lot of plans in a lot of states, it's not covered at all. And PA is one of the ones where like it really depends. Um, so
Oh,
and a lot of them don't.
wait, you
Um,
froze there for a second, love. I'm so
oh,
sorry.
no, you're good. Let me
Okay,
try.
so you said some of them are covered and some of them aren't, and then you were
Yes.
gone.
And then am I still there? It says my connection is unstable, but I think I'm okay. Okay.
Oh, we'll just figure it out. We'll figure
We'll
it out.
just
It's
yeah.
okay.
So right, so some are covered and some aren't, and I ended up finding a surgeon that actually didn't take private health insurance, and a lot of them don't, because a lot of them are actually just plastic surgeons, and so they don't take private health insurance in general. They just don't want to deal with it. But there was like an idea of potential that I could like work with my insurance company afterwards and they would cover things, but like that didn't happen. So I still had to have all this money up front. And what I ended up having to do, and what a lot of people do, is I raised my own funds in my community through like a million different ways. I had like a drag show. Um, Now this was right before COVID or right during COVID, right? So the other layer of this is a lot of times we do these big public drag shows for people, and we couldn't do that because it was COVID. So we ended up doing a virtual one for something unrelated, but they were like, we're going to wrap your surgery fund into this and like turn this into a fundraiser because we're already having the show and we're going to do that. And so like that was one aspect, but it was still like drastically different than what that would have looked like pre-COVID
Right.
because it was just an online audience and we didn't get that same interaction and there weren't as many people. But that was a big avenue. I had friends that made art for me and sold art for me. I had my partner right now, they designed like a t-shirt for me and I did this big t-shirt fundraiser. And every now and then I still see people who I don't know that have those t-shirts on, which I think is really cool. um, I used like social media. I used like every person I knew who would be willing would like share my links and share like my PayPal link, whatever it was. So it was all just like word of mouth and social media. And that was it. I think I only paid out of pocket like the 500 that was my down payment or my like deposit that I had to have. And then the rest of that money, which was like $7,000, I think, maybe 8,000, was all just community. And I hate that that's what we have to do, but I love that our community does that for us, right? Like I
Yeah,
hate that
yeah,
that we have to, or that we can't rely on the systems that are supposed to help us. But I also think that through that and through a lot of just being in this community that I'm in, I've learned that like the community is actually what's going to save us in the end. Like our community is what is going to be there for us when everything else fails. And I really saw that with raising money. It's like if I didn't have people that were willing to, who didn't even know me sometimes, but like knew a friend of a friend and were willing to donate money to someone and to a cause that they really believed in,
right.
it would, you know, save someone's life. Like that's huge.
Which also leads me to the people who are experiencing what you experienced and don't have community,
Mm-hmm.
right? And feel isolated and don't feel like there are the chosen family to be a part of, right? And my heart breaks for those who don't feel that connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's like so much of that depends on circumstances that you can't control, right? Like where you're born, right? We can't control that. And you might end up in a town like I did where like it really wasn't safe to be out.
Nope,
Not
not safe.
all.
Not safe in your town to be out. Not and in
Hmm.
the no, no, not safe.
No. So like and I think about that, like I think there were like two out lesbians in my high school. Um and everyone knew who they were, and it wasn't always a good, like it wasn't a good thing that they were who they were to those people, or a lot of the time, right?
Mhm.
Um and I think they had each other and maybe some friends who were straight, and like that was it. And so yeah, I think my heart does really like break for people in that situation because I think at different points in my life like been there, but I've been able to get out and I've been able to find community. um and I think that like if you can find it anywhere, even if it's like something online, even if it's just like, I don't know, I think we talk about social media and TikTok and Instagram and all of these, like those relationships aren't always real, but I think you can still find community and support on things like that, if you don't have other options. And I think that like my fundraising, like that's what got me there, was finding those communities that were online resources, that were people that I had never met and never spoken to, but who still saw me and were willing to reach out because they saw me as part of their community, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it's not easy, and I don't think that that is always a replacement for like a physical community of people, right? But I think that especially for like teenagers who don't have a lot of control over what they can go, and like I think about myself, I couldn't control leaving my town and finding community somewhere else. um you have to wait, and it sucks, but you have to wait, I think, until you're in a point in your life where you're more stable and can find those people. And again, like I hate that that's our option, but I really think that people can get there and that that community exists somewhere. um and I just don't want people to ever feel like they have to give up, or like that's not ever an option for them, because I think that there are always ways to find people, even people you don't expect, that maybe can support you, or at least just like acknowledge you and know that, you know, I see something in you and something in me sees that, and
Mhm.
that's all we have, but that's something.
How did Dad take top surgery?
Hmm. Yeah, so at this point, I don't actually speak to my dad really about anything unless it's like a family gathering. So when I got top surgery, he didn't know that was happening, right? I didn't say, "Hey, Dad." I haven't
You
spoken to
sprung
him
it on him?
years, but
Well, if anybody was paying attention to your social media, they would have known this was happening because you were
yeah,
raising funds on your social media. So he
he
wasn't
knew.
paying attention to your social media?
No, he did know. I didn't know. I didn't really know his reaction through him. Like I, other people told me his reaction, right? So
Okay.
my mom said that he like had made some comments about right, because I have student loans like many people do.
Yes.
So that was something that he was very concerned about, was like, how am I paying my loans if I'm going to get this surgery, and like why is that money not going towards student loans, which I think is ridiculous because it's like, why if you needed a life-saving surgery, would you be like, well, but I have bills to pay, I guess, you know, I can't afford the surgery, but what if I put a giant down payment on my loans? That's what I should do. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
um but that was as far as I really heard, was just that like he was very concerned about why that money wasn't going toward loans if I had $7,000.
Right, but you're also raising money for a very specific thing. And if you're
Exactly.
raising money for a very specific thing, you can't use those funds for something else. Like that's illegal.
Right, exactly. So whatever, dad. But you know, and I don't know, like now I know he's still not okay with Frankie, right? I think we're very civil when we do see each other at family gatherings, you know, like he will call me Frankie when I'm in the room. I do know that I've gone to the bathroom before and heard from people that he changed the second I went to the bathroom to my dead name and you know, all that. So he is
Oh,
who he
I'm
is.
so sorry.
And
That must be so
that's
painful.
yeah, it's really it has to get to a point, at least for me, right? In order for me to cope, and I think my coping mechanism with that is I have to laugh about it, right? Because I'm just like, you think that I don't know, like you think that mom isn't going to come to me and be like, hey, your dad, because she's my champion, she looks out for me, she's going to tell me when you're doing something shitty behind my back, right? So I just think it's like, it's funny to me that it's that big of a deal to him still, and I'm like, your child is successful, is happy, right? Is happy and is loved and loves who they are, and you're not okay with that. I don't, that's something I can't understand. And I've had to just accept that, like, I don't think I ever will be in a place where I can understand his perspective because it just doesn't make sense to me. And I don't know if he'll ever get to a place where he understands mine. That's something that I have to continue to track in my life if I'm in a place to have those conversations with him, because some days I'm like, I'll write him a letter, and other days I'm like, you probably aren't ready to write that letter yet. You're gonna say some stuff that you shouldn't say right now.
So I'm a big believer, and I do this all the time, in writing the letter and
Mhm.
then burning the letter.
You, I think, were one of the first people that ever told me write the letter and never send it.
Yeah. Hmm. Write
So
the
yeah,
letter and then never send it, because then you get to like say what you really are thinking, and it
mhm,
gets all the beginning junk out, right?
yeah,
And it gets to the deeper layer of what's actually in there. Like what is that stuff that's in there that's deeper down that you really want to say, that you've got to move the shitty stuff away so that you can say the actual real like stuff that will help the relationship grow.
yeah, yeah. And I've written some of those letters. I've gone through some of that. I think what I keep hinging on is not knowing and believing really that my dad is not going to do that work, right? I don't think he
Mhm.
is in a space where he's ready to get all that shit out and tell me what actually is happening under all of that. And just like we talked about before, I see that mask and I see there's something under there, and I don't know what it is. I think a lot of it is fear, and I think that a
Mhm.
lot of it is just not understanding and just ignorance. But I don't know if I'll be in a place where, or if he'll be in a place where we can both be on that level to talk to each other about it. And I think something I've had to learn, and that a lot of people who are from groups that have been historically marginalized, right? Not just queer people, but I think a lot of people go through this, is you have to decide what energy you're willing to give people.
Mhm.
And at a
Yep.
certain point, you realize, you know what, it's not worth it. And it's okay, even when it's family, right? I think it's very okay to say, it's not worth my time or the pain this might cause me, without knowing if that's going to ever change, and without knowing if that person is ever going to see that pain and understand it fully. It's not worth me doing that to myself and putting myself in that position anymore. Um, and that's okay. It's okay to land there, and it's okay to stay there, and it's okay to oscillate
Mhm.
between all those feelings a million times when you're thinking about stuff like this, because when it's family, it's hard. But I think it's really important to still take care of yourself at the end of the day, no matter what.
Agreed. 100%. So I have we've been at this for a while. So I have, are you sleepy? Are you getting overwhelmed? Do you feel
Not
like I'm
quite.
grilling you? Are you
I
feeling
think I
comfortable?
looked at the time and I was like, whoa, it's been a while. So
So I have one other quick question, and that is, how has your relationship with the church
Mhm.
changed?
Yeah. So I think in recent months that answer has become a lot more complicated, right? Because for a
I'll
long
just
time.
I'm cutting off for a second.
Mhm.
Mine has too.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I'm with you. Like I recently had an event and I walked into a church and I was like, oh. And it
Yeah.
all landed in a way for me, the way that I felt it would land for my family who weren't believers. And I was like, I get why this is offensive.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely cannot sit through a church service anymore, because there's a lot of things that are said and there are a lot of verses that are read that I'm like, are we all hearing the same thing? Are all of you hearing what I just heard? And, I don't think, so I cannot sit through church services anymore for a lot of reasons. But, um, through Messiah, I did recognize, and I got to a point where I was like, I am a gay Christian, and gay Christians exist, and people can hold those two identities. And I recognize that that's a possibility for a lot of people. A lot of people are able to come to that conclusion regardless of what they grew up with. Um, and for me, I just could not accept the amount of pain that I felt like the church, which when I say the church, I think about the people, right? I think that Christianity is the religion and the church is the people who do things with that religion.
Right.
Um, I think the church does a lot of harm to people, sometimes intentionally, I really do think, unfortunately. And
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't accept that that was a truth and be able to put that aside and be like, but I can still do this and it's still okay. And like, I am one of the good ones in this. And I think a lot of that was because it caused me so much pain personally, right? It wasn't just I was seeing other people be hurt. It was like I was hurt by this religion and by this system and by these people. And I don't want to try to put myself back in that box again and see where I land because I left that, I left that box and I found this beautiful side that is real to me now. Um, so I definitely am not somebody who calls myself a Christian. I think I am a very spiritual person.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a lot more connected to like energy and the universe and even just like ancestors and spirits, and all that good stuff. I talk to ancestors a lot about things because there's a lot of people in my life that I think passed away before I was at an age where I could talk to them about a lot of this stuff. And I think they would have gotten it. And I feel sad that I didn't get to see them as people in this world, but I recognize there's still a connection with them that I have.
Yep.
So that's where a lot of my belief is placed. I think that when I think of Christianity and I think of people in the church and who believe in that, I have a lot of complex feelings because I still am like, you can be the good ones, but what are you doing about the bad ones? What are you doing about the people that aren't safe and that are harming people in my community? And I don't think that they're doing enough, I really don't. And so it's hard for me to not necessarily like I don't accept those people, right? I think I still accept them as people and I recognize they're in my community too, right? But it's really hard for me to be in community with them actively and intentionally. I can
And
recognize
vulnerably
and
and
vulnerably.
authentically,
Yes.
and like where you're exposing your heart to them, it's just not safe.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like that. And like I think a lot of people from different perspectives can understand this, but I think trans people can understand it a lot where you have that one friend or relative or aunt, whoever, who tries really hard to be right, but they end up saying a lot of the wrong things. And like they're the person that you give them the books and you have the conversation, you say, like, listen, there are they, them, and that can be this, and that's not more than one person. And they're like, I got it. And they continue to mess it up, right? It doesn't quite click with them. That's kind of how I feel about people who are like the good accepting Christians. I'm like, you're not necessarily safe for me to be around because I have to give a lot of energy to feel okay in here. And there's a lot of harm you do unintentionally and that you don't take the time to see.
Right.
But I still see that you're my family and I still see you're trying. So I'm not going to write you off, right? I'm still going to be like, you can keep trying and I'm going to keep waiting. But I also am not going to expect anything more from you at a certain point.
Right. Right. I
Yeah.
mean, it's one thing if like, you're in the kitchen and everybody's grabbing the hot things and they're like, hey, and your dead name flies out of their mouth because they've
Mhm.
got like pot holders in their hands and they're just like grasping at like, pulling dinner together, right? And
Mhm.
another thing to be like, I've told you repeatedly,
Yeah,
that is not my name.
exactly. Yep. And it's different when it's like somebody who has known me for a long time and somebody who's just met me. Because like if you just met me, you don't have any excuse. If you know me for a long time, I get it. But I also think it's funny because just recently, my grandmother, who is 91, 92, she's actually in memory care right now. So she's starting to forget a lot of things. But she's still in a place where she like knows she's forgetting things, you know,
Right, right, right.
which is like a hard space for her to be in and a
I'm
hard
sure it's
space to
terrible.
see her in, right? But what I think is so just endearing about her, and this is a story I've shared with a couple family members, is that she recently, when I saw her, she has not dead named me when I've been there ever. She always calls
Oh,
me Frankie, always. And just recently, after calling me Frankie for like an hour of this conversation when we were together, she said, you know, my memory isn't good. So sometimes I might call you that other name, but I know you're Frankie. And she hadn't said the other name once, but she was still like, I know who you are. I know you're Frankie. And so I'm like, if
oh, that
this
makes me
woman
cry.
who's right, 91, doesn't always know what's going on, doesn't always remember where she is, but she knows who I am, like that, you don't have any excuse if she's able to do this for me, because at this point in her life, like she's still looking out and she's still seeing and recognizing that that's important to me and that that matters to me, and she's holding on to that.
Right.
And so I'm like, other people, y'all can do it too, right? You can step it up and you can like get on Kitty's level. Kitty knows what she's doing.
And then I also have to say there might be a game going on
Hmm.
that if your dad is not willing to call you the name and they are attached to your dad in some way, they may not want to stir the pot with him, but they're
Hmm.
willing to stir the pot with you.
Yeah, yeah. And there's some of that that I think happens more behind the scenes than to my face, right?
Right.
Um, I know there are family members that are a lot closer with him and do see his side, and he gets a lot of pity, I think, from them for the situation, because I am the one that did the cutting off. I don't think I had a choice, right? I think that I did it for a lot of safety, mental health, living reasons. But because I'm the one that did that, I think that there is a perspective where he's been so hurt by that, but he doesn't talk to me about that, right? He's not talking to me and bringing those emotions to me. So all I hear and see is like they take his side, sometimes they see his side, um and they might say, oh, Frankie, you know, don't you get it, your poor dad. And I'm like, all right. He's not my poor dad to me. Like, I see that you have this different relationship with him, that's fine, but this is what I believe and this is what I needed to do, and I stand by it. And usually people are okay with that. So
Right.
yeah, which is lucky, right? That's not always the situation. I think it can be a big family war of many people telling you what you should be doing and thinking and saying in all these moments. And I feel lucky that if there is more talk behind the scenes, I don't hear it, and I'm okay with not hearing it, right? I'm okay with being like, y'all can talk about me all you want. I'm so popular, but I'm going to live my life.
There's a there's a line that goes around in the energy world, which is basically your opinion of me doesn't I have no right to your opinion of me.
Hmm.
Right? Like your opinion of me is your personal business and I don't necessarily I don't need it. I don't
Yeah.
have a right to it. It's your personal business. It's you to work out for yourself, but it's also like that's your stuff. You think of me whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Anything else that you want to add? Do you feel like there's something I mean, I think we've hit on a number of things without actually talking about them. Normally, I ask like the systemic question, right? But I feel like
Yeah.
we talked about systemic issues. We talked about what it was like to be in school, and we talked about what it was like to be in the church, and we talked about like the insurance company issue, right? And we talked about families and how families, you get to choose your family and you get to choose who's supporting you and who's not supporting you. I feel like we talked about the systemic thing. We don't really have to like beat that.
Yeah.
But is there something specific that you're like, I have this platform, I have this airspace, I'm willing, there's something I feel like I really want to share.
Hmm.
You can
Yeah, so I touched on this a little bit. I think and maybe I talked more about like it as a thought experiment, but this idea of like the current, future, and past self.
mm-hmm.
Um, I think something that has been really powerful for me, and I think regardless of your journey, whether you are someone like me who has come and been dealing with gender identity and sexuality, whether you're dealing with just mental health stuff or physical health, whatever it is, I think that when you get to the other side of something, reaching back to those past selves is a really powerful thing that you can do and that you are able to do. Um, and I think it's not always easy, um, because I know that my past self, right? I think of to me, like little Frankie, I had to create an image for them in my mind because there's somebody that I think about so often. So it's like me as like a maybe 10 to 12-year old, like that kind of age range. Um, I was a really angry person for a long time. And I know why. I know what I was dealing with, and I know where a lot of that anger came from. But like little Frankie was scary. When I was like, hey, I want to connect and learn about you and figure out like what made you tick and why, whatever, and like how I've come to where I am now. And they were not happy, right? They were like, I felt very scared to dig into that part of myself because it felt so alien. But when you can do that and when you can recognize and say like, that was still me, that was a different version of me that maybe I don't align with now, but like that person is still with me, and there's some work I need to do to talk to them about like what they deserved. I think that's where I started, was you deserved like everything you have now, and every good thing that's going to come to you, you deserved as that kid, as that child, and that past self, and you didn't have it, and that wasn't fair. And that's where I leave it, right? And I let myself think about that and just recognize that wasn't fair. That wasn't fair. And I think even if you start with that, I think there's a lot of deeper conversations I've had with that past self since then. But just starting with that and letting yourself acknowledge that, because as kids, when we say it's not fair, we're told, too bad, that's the way it is. And it shouldn't be the way it is. And I think when you can just say it's not fair, and that is the truth, and there is no caveat in that an adult can tell you, there's a lot of power, and I just think healing that can come from that moment. So I just encourage people, as wonky as it might seem, right? And I think people that listen to your podcast, I'm sure, have done this work and maybe understand this. Some people maybe not, but like if you can learn to just talk to your past self, and just start with that. Start with like, you deserved this, and what you received wasn't fair, and just see where that takes you.
That's beautiful. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's totally true too.
Yeah.
Frankie, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's so good to see you.
You too. Was that good? Was that
So yes, of course. And we're still recording. So
we're still recording. Cool. So cut that bit and
all right, let me pause. Or I'm gonna actually stop recording, and then I'm gonna hit record again to do the